Major financial crises explain the moment you realize that the world's economy has almost collapsed not once, not twice, but over and over throughout history. You begin to see a pattern that feels almost alive, like a story with villains, heroes, moments of triumph, and moments where everything seems to fall apart right before your eyes. And today, what we're going to talk about on Money Explained simply will feel like riding an emotional roller coaster through time. A journey into the heart of human behavior, fear, greed, hope, and the consequences of choices that affected millions of lives. Imagine waking up one morning and discovering that your savings, everything you trusted, might be slipping away, that the promise of the future you planned could vanish in a blink. Because that is exactly what happened, not just once, but multiple times in history, when financial crises struck with devastating force. Before we go further, make sure you take a moment to hit like and subscribe, because the stories you're about to hear aren't just numbers on a page. They are real human tragedies and triumphs that shape the world we live in today, and I want you here with me for every twist and turn. Now take a deep breath, because we're about to dive deep into the unseen forces that shook the world. Beginning with one of the earliest and most defining collapses in modern economic history, the Great Depression. The year is 1929. Picture a time when jazz filled the airwaves. The world was buzzing with innovation, and people believed in endless progress. Stocks climbed higher and higher, and ordinary families were swept up in dreams of wealth. The stock market was no longer something only bankers talked about. Farmers, teachers, and factory workers were borrowing money to buy shares, convinced that prices would keep rising forever. But what goes up must come down, and in late October, that illusion shattered. On a day now known as Black Tuesday, panic gripped Wall Street, prices plummeted, and in just a few terrifying hours, fortunes evaporated. Banks that had invested unwisely failed, savings were wiped out, and unemployment soared. Entire families lost their homes, soup lines formed in the streets, and hope became a scarce commodity. This wasn't just an economic crash. It was a human catastrophe that rippled across the globe. People who had once felt secure suddenly found themselves struggling for basic survival. And the aftershocks lasted for a decade, shaping a generation and redefining the relationship between governments, markets, and citizens. Just when the world began to recover from the Great Depression, another crisis was brewing decades later, one that exposed the fragility of belief itself. In the late 1990s, the dot-com bubble took hold. The internet was new, exciting, and full of promise. Tech startups popped up like wildflowers after rain, and investors poured money into anything with a .com attached to it. Stories circulated of young founders becoming millionaires overnight, and the frenzy was unstoppable. People forgot that businesses needed profits to survive, that revenue mattered, and that dreams without substance could collapse under their own weight. Collapse they did. When investors realized that many of these companies had no real path to making money, confidence evaporated. Stocks tanked, and trillions of dollars in market value disappeared. Once again, ordinary investors were left holding the bag. The lesson was painfully clear. Excitement and hype can drive markets, but without fundamentals, there's no foundation to stand on. You might wonder why this keeps happening, why humans repeatedly fall into similar traps. And the answer lies deep within our psychology: fear, greed, trust, and the powerful narratives we tell ourselves. Decades later, in 2008, the world would face another of these moments, the financial crisis that began in the housing market but spread to every corner of the global economy. Imagine a world where banks were handing out home loans to people who couldn't afford them, or financial institutions bundled those shaky loans into complex packages, sold them to investors, and convinced everyone they were safe. Homes that once represented security became ticking time bombs. When people began defaulting on their mortgages, the cracks turned into chasms. Major firms collapsed, governments had to step in to prevent total economic meltdown, and millions lost their jobs, homes, and futures. Entire industries were shaken, and families across America and beyond were thrust into uncertainty. What was once abstract mortgages, derivatives, credit default swaps became painfully real as people watched their retirement accounts shrink and their communities struggle. These crises might seem separated by time, but at their core, they share something profoundly human: optimism unchecked by caution, belief in endless growth, and the hope that tomorrow will always be better than today. And yet, that hope, while often a force for good, can become dangerous when it blinds us to risk. As we reflect on these monumental events, it's important to understand that these aren't just stories of numbers and charts. They are stories of people, dreams, families, and the unpredictable dance between fear and hope. We see that during the Great Depression, people shared what little they had with neighbors in need. Communities banded together, and in those darkest moments, the strength of human connection became apparent. During the dot-com crash, innovators learned valuable lessons that paved the way for the tech giants of today, reminding us that failure can be a stepping stone to progress if we choose to learn from it. And after the 2008 crisis, new regulations, reforms, and conversations about financial responsibility emerged, pushing the world to rethink how money, power, and trust interact in a global economy. You might be wondering, could something like this happen again? The short answer is yes. History doesn't repeat itself exactly, but it often rhymes. Human nature doesn't change as fast as technology does. And until we fully understand our own impulses toward fear and greed, we will continue to see cycles of boom and bust. But awareness is power. By understanding what happened, why it happened, and the human stories behind the numbers, we equip ourselves to make wiser choices, both as individuals and as a society. Think about your own financial decisions, your hopes for the future, and how you interpret risk. Do you chase the next big trend because everyone else seems to be doing it? Or do you pause, reflect, and ask the hard questions? Every crisis in history offers lessons if we're willing to listen. As we near the end of this journey, through some of the most defining financial crises in modern history, I want you to pause and consider something deeply personal. These events weren't just about markets crashing, they were about lives changing, communities adapting, and people finding ways to rebuild when all seemed lost. That's the human story at the heart of every economic collapse. Resilience, adaptation, the enduring belief that even in the face of uncertainty, we can find a way forward. And here's where you come in. I want to hear your thoughts. What part of these stories surprised you the most? What lessons do you think we need to remember as we move forward in an unpredictable world? Share your perspective in the comments below, because your voice matters and others may learn from what you've experienced or believe. If this video helped you see financial history in a new light, consider sharing it with friends or family who might benefit from these insights. Together, we can spark thoughtful conversations, build understanding, and maybe, just maybe, help each other avoid the mistakes of the past as we write the story of our future. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.